Anyway, Rogers, I see you've got some of your stuff up. We might have to do a bit of a speed run, but
Oh my
let's go
goodness.
into an Atlas hole. I
You shouldn't have
mean,
said that. Yeah, look, I'll try and
show
make
me
it
your
as snappy
Atlas
as
hole,
possible.
please.
I'll show you my Atlas hole in just 1 second. So firstly, this is a good place for the mic, right? Just before I continue talking.
Yep, nah, it's good.
You can hear me? Cool. All right. Put it up.
Oh, yep, sorry.
There you go. So, what am I doing? Well, look, Mage was kind enough to ask me to try and look into something for when I was invited on the show, and I had quite a few things lined up, and this was one of the ones that have been itching the back of my mind for quite a bit now. So, 1st of December last month, Q&A releases this video called The Atlas Network, What Is It? Which was just kind of
smoke up their asshole.
Yeah, kind of just a puff piece for Atlas, and left a lot of people godsmacked. So starting with that, it starts off by interviewing Debbie Gibbs here, who is on the Atlas board for over 10 years. She was chair of the board of directors since 2021. She's outgoing, I believe. She's daughter of Alan and Jenny Gibbs. We'll hear about them later, but they're, as people may know, they're quite influential figures in New Zealand. She worked for 95 BFM, which I thought was interesting. She seemed to have some kind of radio hosting career, and she did a couple interesting things I thought I'd just note about that. She said when getting accepted to the radio station that she accredits partly to diversity hiring. It seems she seems to imply that she was not worthy of the position, and she, quote, would hire any stray female who walked in the door regardless of their abilities. And was encouraged to run the station for political reasons. So it seems like that was sort of her first political play. That's in an interview with 95 a couple of years back, maybe a decade. So I listened to the entire thing.
Some weird internalized misogyny, but okay. Yeah. Pop off
exactly.
this, I guess.
Yep. And then I wanted to outline sort of the key questions on what I had and what this video was trying to answer, which is, what is Atlas? Why did Q&A make this puff piece, and why they allege this? They show a clip of Dr. No from James Bond in the video, alleging it's this super Dr. Evil society. But going forward, we might not. That's not that big of a stretch, honestly, if you sort of start piecing everything together. And the other thing was just, do they fund political activity? She gave a pretty blatant no, we don't in there. And the thing was, they reiterated about 3 or 4 times that we shouldn't make assumptions. So I decided, you know what, let's not make assumptions. Let's just go digging. So that's what I decided to do. And so I did a deep dive into the history of Atlas and kind of the whole neolib framework. So I'm just going to introduce you to a few key characters that we're going to see constantly popping up. I call them the 3 besties. We have Friedrich Hayek, Milton Friedman, and we have Anthony Fisher. Friedrich Hayek is, your debate bro, born in Vienna, who's like a Jordan Peterson type, very reserved, champion of free market. He founded the it's like the Moan Pillarin Society. I do not remember how to pronounce it. It's something along those lines. And he wrote a book known as The Road to Serfdom, which basically says government control is bad. And it's essentially like the neoliberal playbook. This other man, Milton Friedman, also a debate bro. He's Dawkins, Nigel Crust, Tyson sort of type. He's very eccentric. So he's less of the reserved, methodical type. He's going around places. He's talking to people about, the free market. He's that kind of guy. He's very triggered by Kenyanism. He's the guy that originated the whole natural state of unemployment thing. That we use them. Yep. He's that guy. He developed monetarism, which is the opposite of Keynesianism, sorry, which is Keynesianism is like in COVID when they injected money into the economy because we're going into recession. That was great. He's the opposite. Don't touch it. We don't want inflation going up. My billions, by billions, millions. He's that kind of guy.
So millions Friedman, we could call him. Okay, good to know.
If you want. Yeah, I was bestie number 2, but and then you got Anthony Fisher, who is the originator, the key architect behind Atlas. This guy founded Atlas. He was sort of your Walt Disney Steve Jobs type. He was very inspired by Hayek's book, The Road to Serfdom. And Atlas has a couple of things to say on their website. It's very much just like the Wikipedia page, but it did have one key thing I wanted to highlight, which was they said he was inspired to think of ways to drive grassroots level change and promote free market opportunities. So these guys see them as grassroots. They see themselves, or at least sell themselves as grassroots. So that's a part of their sort of ploy, is trying to appeal to that mindset, that this isn't a big government, this isn't big business. This is small individual people like helping each other in the name of capitalism, I guess. All right, so now we go on to the here it is, the Mon Pelerin Society. There you go, that's how you pronounce it. Which was founded in 1947. That was 1 year after Friedman goes to University of Chicago. We'll talk about that a bit later. It's sort of a sultry thinkers club for smoking gentlemen. There was probably a lot of sexual there, I assume. These guys sat around and just sniffed each other's farts and went, yes, that is a great idea. You're quite a sexual. So I'm sure they had a great time. Hopefully no one touched each other's legs, but maybe
smoke up each other. Yeah.
Maybe they would have had a better time. And look, so these guys, Friedman and Hayek, they invited their mentors to come along, who we'll hear about later. And then you've got the University of Chicago and the Chicago School of Economics. This is also going to be constantly referenced.
Very bad.
Very bad. This is from that guy. Sorry, it wasn't founded by the guy Milton Friedman, but he is sort of a very key figure in a lot of this. He was a teacher there and trained a lot of the people we're going to sort of see later on coming back into this. So that's free market advocacy, economic institution, best way to put it. And key faculty and alumni were Milton Friedman, the Chicago boys, who we're going to find about later, and Ronald Coase, who just had, I wanted to note just this little this theory that he was promoting, which was Coase theorem, which argues that the property rights and negotiation can address externalities without government intervention. So an example of that being, you have two scenarios. In the main scenario, a factory emits smoke that damages nearby residents' health. So let's say the residents have the right to clean air, like they do. Yeah. The factory can negotiate with them and perhaps pay them to tolerate the pollution. And if the factory has the right to pollute, residents can negotiate with the factory paying it to reduce emissions. So that's sort of an example of how that will work. It's basically government doesn't regulate anything, and you guys are sort of just dealing with the big factory. So personhood to a river, not going to work with that theory.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point, is that if a river is a person, then you got to negotiate with the river too.
Puts a stopper in that, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, and now we're just going to brush over some of the side characters. We have this man called Brad Lips, horrible name, CEO of Atlas.
Brad Lips.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And he has a quote that he's repeated, I think once or twice, and this greatly goes back to this guy Friedman from before. He says, "Only a crisis or actual or perceived produces real change. When a crisis occurs, the action that takes depend blah blah blah." So he's saying essentially, you need to incite a crisis if you want to get shit done. So that's sort of his view on the world. You got Alan Gibbs, as mentioned before, your dad of Debbie, who was in the interview. Big businessman, very influential in New Zealand, and some people have dubbed him the godfather, of ACT. I've seen. You have Charles and David Koch, just Koch brothers, big libertarian think tanks. They're like your Mr. Burns type, essentially. Horrible. You have George Mason. This is allegedly where perhaps David Seymour may have gone. There's no confirmation of that.
Oh, is that Atlas University?
Yeah. It got
Nice.
direct involvement in Atlas with Atlas
Yes.
and Coke. So this has direct ties, and there's some of the alumni and key figures there, and just a couple of the other things highlighted:
Yes.
Cato Institute, Heritage Foundation, Heartland Institute, Taxpayers Union, and New Zealand Initiative. All right, we're going to skip over this, and we're now going to go to the timeline. I've got two timelines just to make things easier, but this is sort of just going back to the basic origins of where this sort of all happened. So I decided to start with Standard Oil being broken up in 1911, founded by the Rockefellers. It was broken up into multiple divisions. Two of them became Exxon and Mobil, which remerged later in 99. You had a couple more of those, like Chevron got Kentucky and Texaco back. Amco merged with BP, so stuff like that. But it essentially sort of indicated a shift in the geopolitical consciousness at the time, at least. This guy, Ludwig von Mises, he was Hayek's teacher, this guy. So he basically, he was sort of just laid the groundwork for all sort of neoliberal thinkers to this day, essentially. He was a key figure in the Austrian School of Economics, and he bridged the gap, essentially, sort of between 19th century classical economics and 20th century revival free market economics. So he had a pivotal role to play there. Goes on to inspire... what's his name? Hayek to pursue his desires, I guess. Sorry, I'm not rehearsing.
An agenda. I think there's an agenda. Yeah, that's the one.
Agenda. That's a better way to put it. All right. So then you have Fisher meets Hayek in 45. They'll go on to have a quite impactful relationship with each other. Who knows? Maybe there's, I think they might have really liked each other. Actually, I think there might be some tension there. They may have made love at one point, but though Hayek won't admit it. So,
friends to lovers,
Exactly.
I want to believe.
I do too. Yeah. Now the Mon Pelerin Society, or MPS, as I'm probably going to try and call it from here out. So Hayek founds it, invites Friedman, invites Friedman, invites their mentors, and eventually Fisher gets in there as well. Anthony Fisher, the founder of Atlas, and essentially at some point he sends his boy Hayek sends Fisher out on a quest in his name, in his honor, to spread the good word of freedom and capitalism, and. They start doing that, and this is the first result of it is the Institute of Economic Affairs, which it's sort of your alpha atlas. It's your Atlas Alpha, essentially. This is in the UK. This started printing a whole lot of media promoting neoliberal thought and that kind of stuff. They were funded by big oil, BP, Shell, Exxon, again, Coke. You're going to see those guys coming into
all
a lot
the
of this.
time, I'm assuming.
Yep. If we have a chance later on, we might even peek at some of the works they published. But as I mentioned before, The Road to Serfdom, Hayek's sort of main, most well-known work was published through them. All right, and after that, it just keeps going. You have Fisher going around the world promoting think tanks. They start opening just everywhere, and a part of this is because he's so dismayed by the welfare state as he was seeing it in the UK that was emerging at the time, and he wanted to combat that, particularly the civil rights movement and grassroots movement that were coming out of the 60s and 70s, all those social movements. They wanted to try and counteract that, and that this was their plan, was to open up all these think tanks. So then you get things like Fraser Institute in 74. Then you get in Australia, Institute of Independent Studies. Then you get some other ones in Netherlands, France, Germany. You get Venezuela and Brazil, Argentina. Keeps going, and then you get to 1988, where sort of an incident happens. So firstly, you've got this event called the Hansen Testimony, which was essentially this guy he said something like unfounded, which was like he's 99.99% sure that human pollution is affecting climate change and stuff. What that did was it prompted Exxon to release pretty much all the information they've been harboring over the last few decades or century, how long, and keeping from the public, because throughout the time they had been obviously not only researching all their effects on climate change but denying it simultaneously.
Of course.
Yeah. Exactly. Then you get some, and that starts going into counteraction movement after this, because the cat's out of the bag. You got to start fighting against it. So now you start getting this funding of all these climate denial people. Most notable being, at least for us, this man named Fred Singer. He did a tour around the 1990s, where I suppose he decided to go around and just start spreading the word of how it's fine, guys. Just don't believe it.
No, that makes sense. Yeah. I always wondered why my mum believed that stuff when I was younger. And I mean, the dates line up now.
Yep.
That's 4 years before I was born, so.
Anyway, that gets the end of that first timeline. So that's sort of the building of Atlas. I think I missed Atlas 81 was when Atlas was actually founded. I might have missed putting that one in, but thankfully I know the date because I've been living this for about 4 days. So next we get the rise of the drug trade. So this, we'll go on to mention this, but this sort of started around the 1970s, and this would later on go to be more heavily impacted by a known event called, well, I guess Pinochet, or I believe it's pronounced Pinochet, and the Chicago Boys were mentioned before. Pinochet, there you go. And the Chicago Boys who went to Chicago University, as I mentioned before, under this man, Milton Friedman, who was bestie number 2. So bestie number 2 and his little underlings essentially helped, well, I'm going a bit too ahead. So you had the President Salvador Allende, I think it was. He wanted to privatize U.S. mines and some Exxon and PB stuff that were in their country.
Right.
Pretty based. And they were going to do that. And then Pinochet did a coup, helped by, loving the economic freedom of these guys, right? Like, you guys want to do economics? And you said, nah, we're going to take over.
If I could just jump in with a little thing about Pinochet.
Yep.
The current hard right love mentioning Pinochet because one of the things that he did was abduct communist people and throw them out of helicopters.
What?
Pinochet,
I didn't have that in my research.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what they used to do.
The timeline.
And that was just
hell.
Yeah, that's key points.
From a people's government, a left wing, like it was a left wing government, not even like a hardcore communist government, but that was enough for him to get to a coup and start chucking people out of helicopters. That is still held up by some on the right in the States, especially on online spaces, as the cure for left-wing people is to throw them out of helicopters. Pinochet and Margaret Thatcher had a very close relationship as well.
Oh, you're getting ahead of me. You got to slow down. Okay.
I only meant to mention the helicopters.
Yeah, history lessons resuming.
Anyway, that coup was supported by the Nixon administration. And later they had reforms that were funded by the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. His regime lasted until 1990. We had... sorry, that's the chat popping up and distracting me.
My bad. All right, that was me.
So, yeah, and the MPS, the Mont Pelerin Society was hosted by the regime in 1980. So there's a connection right there to Hayek. And their little secret smoker club. They used economic policies that were designed by this group called the Chicago Boys that went to the university with Friedman. As I said, they implemented this technique that was known as shock therapy reforms. That's kind of like Rogernomics, and pretty much exactly Rogernomics, which went alongside, widespread human rights abuses, including disappearances, torture. Apparently, people being thrown out of planes too. So essentially GDP growth went up, but so did unemployment, inequality, civil unrest, all that stuff. Friedman did visit, again, the bald man here. Friedman did visit in 1975, and he wrote letters to Pinochet. He even had a direct response in regards to people criticizing his assistance. He said, "I do not consider it as evil for an economist to render technical economic advice to the Chilean government as I would for a physician to give technical medical advice to the Chilean government for a medical clerk." So there you go. He wasn't too bothered by helping this regime by the sounds of it. No remorse. Anyway, so yeah, going on just from that, actually a fun little fact, if anyone knows Breaking Bad, Gustavo Fring, sort of fan canon, ties him back to being a generalissimo in the Pinochet regime. And I'm not sure if that's Vince Gilligan trying to make some sort of social commentary on how neoliberal thinking would thrive in the drug trade, but I'm convinced it would. Like, why wouldn't it? It's exactly what they want, is an unregulated market. So I'm sure that thinking would just go great there. And that, of course, goes back to what I was saying before with the expansion of the rise of drug trade. All these, so Chile became a model for Latin American nations. They started sort of trying to imitate this stuff with pressure from IMF and World Bank. This went to countries like Bolivia, Argentina, Colombia, yada, yada. And the privatization, security enforcements, laissez-faire markets, lack of opportunity, all this stuff just led to, inclusion of the North American Free Trade Agreement, all led to just conditions that made the drug trade thrive because people were desperate, I guess, more or less. So, of course, they're going to go towards these giant figures. Anyway. Sorry, I had Friedman visited Pinochet, and then he responded. Then you get down to Thatcherism.
There she is.
Gonna brush over it. There she is.
This bitch.
Would you like to say anything?
I mean, I think that's
the more
what
I
you're
learn
saying.
about Maggie Thatcher, the less I think she's a good person.
Yeah. She's kind of, actually, well, could we say that she was the original example of the worst human before her grandson David Seymour came onto the scene? Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. She was like in the same time as Reagan.
When confronted with the problem that the coal miners were striking, her solution was to call out the army.
Fucking.
She is not a good dude.
Yeah, sounds like an absolute asshole.
Yeah, and look, in my opinion, this is the first domino in UK's ultimate sort of decline to where it is this day. It was the first chink in the armor, and Thatcher was influenced by Hayek, as we discussed before. The guy who wrote the Road to Serfdom, and the MPS, and Thatcher was famously presented a copy of Friedrich, so Bestie number 2. She slammed down like a copy allegedly in a board meeting with all her party members, and basically said, "This is what we believe now." It was The Constitution of Liberty was the book, and she just said, "This is what we believe. This is our philosophy." So quite wrote, just copying the blatantly just said, "Look, we believe exactly what these neolibs and all these market free thinkers are sort of telling us." So straight from the horse's mouth, basically. Yep. And after that, of course, she goes on to just cut everything, privatize everything, slashes, like the British oil, sells off their 51% share in British Petroleum, all that stuff. Just, yeah, not a good time. And then you go on to other administrations just in Venezuela. Venezuela was just sort of one of those cases where it was just whittled down by neoliberal reforms, mainly from U.S. Foreign assistance, which basically paved the way for Hugo Chavez in the 1990s. You get Reaganomics. I mean, pretty much most people don't need an introduction to Reaganomics. However, what I think is more interesting about Reagan and Reaganomics is not only did they adopt many of Friedman's philosophies, Friedman served as an unofficial advisor during Reagan for his 1980 presidential campaign, and later became a member of the president's Economic Policy Advisory Board that throughout Reagan's tenure. So literally directly, this directly involved. So one of the three key figures, literally right in the heart of Reagan's administration. Now we go on to Rogernomics and euthanasia, which I'm also going to probably gloss over a little bit. But did you want to touch on any of that, Chewie?
It's all going wrong in New Zealand at this point.
Yeah, you lived through it, didn't you?
This is like he was reading all of those people's homework.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is what stuns me. Like I remember when I told my wife, who's English, had at that point no grounding in New Zealand politics, and when I explained to her that the finance minister for a Labour government set all of this in motion and gave birth to ACT. It's just like, what? And I'm like, yeah. Roger Douglas. Like I think the spin-off had a piece the other day going over the private correspondence between David Longy and Roger Douglas, which was incredibly enlightening. That those two hated each other by the end of this and couldn't be in the same fucking room. Roger Douglas was a rat in the Labour Party and just painted people into a corner and straight up lied about what he was trying to achieve. The Labour government at that point didn't have a lot of choices, but Roger Douglas lied to them all to get his vision enacted.
And shout out just to Tui Politics. He's got a very good video called The Entire History of the ACT Party. People go check that out, please. I did use that as a reference point. He's got one of the Māori Party too, which is also good. And one called What Has Peter Done, which I thought was just funny.
I love that.
Yeah. Anyway, so as you can see, there's basically zero economic growth from 72 to 84. That was after, thanks to Thatcher. Well, not kind of thanks to Thatcher. I think she was actually maybe against it. But whilst Thatcher was there, they went into, they joined the EU. And essentially now the giant farm that is New Zealand doesn't have customer. So that led to, about a decade of pretty much zero economic growth. And the Treasury apparently just allegedly just completely sort of gave up on Muldoon. They couldn't even negotiate with him. So they anticipated his loss at next election, just started like getting together an economic plan that they could get when Longy came in to help them. So it was that bad. Even the Treasury was like, screw this guy. We're not even going to try. I wish our Treasury did that now, but so things weren't efficient. I think famously, I like to reference the Margarine Act of 1908, which would put strict controls on the sale of margarine. You allegedly had to get a doctor's note to do that. Like this is all target policies, really, because we produced butter, so it was seen as, I guess, unpatriotic to get margarine. But so all these were autarkic policies that were pretty much the success of which can be evidenced by results of Nazi Germany, fascist Italy, Soviet Union, North Korea, who all tried this same strategy. So Muldoon, it didn't work for him. NZ, I already said that bit about the NZ Treasury. We know what, and it looked cuts. That was the main thing that happened with all of Rogernomics. There were some key things that did sort of happen in between that time. The MPS Society had a conference in Christchurch in '88, which about 4 years after, I think, Douglas started. And Douglas the next year actually did a speech called The Politics of Successful Reform at an MPS meeting in Australia. So more ties back to Hayek and the MPS Smokers Club. But Douglas actually wanted to go further and make more reforms after this. And this is where sort of Longy, I think, possibly, allegedly, I think from Helen Clark, she sort of says she egged him on a bit. He seemed to have sort of smelled the rigor mortis in the corpse that was rotting next to him. He rage quits, essentially. Longy rage quits because he gets rid of him, but then they bring him back. Parliament votes to somehow bring Rogers back. Somehow bring him back. I don't know the ins and outs of it. But yeah, then Longy rage quits. Rogers and Preble come back. Brash comes in out of this in the I'm blanking on the word. The Reserve Bank.
Right.
Yep. So that's where he sort of comes into this. He was appointed as head of that. Labour gets out. Euthanasia comes in. Roger Douglas rage quits in 1990. Preble rage quits, out of frustration from Labour. Then they go on to, make their little fun ACT club in 1999. So, and during this time, so this is from Rogernomics and throughout Rogernomics and Euthanasia, you had a wealth divide rise of about 120%, which is about an average of 14% per year. And GDP growth from 84 to 93 averaged around 0.5%, which is better than the nothing we had. But if you compare that to
0.5,
you compare that
insanely low.
Pretty much the same time frame, and the next administration, the Clark administration, they made about that it was something about 8 times as much, so 4% annual growth a year.
Yeah.
So the results a bit different, proofs in the pudding. I feel.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's all sounding very. I mean, like Chewie's pointed out before, that old this euthanasia and stuff is already being seen here. So like, just saying, I'm like, yeah, I see your date only ends at what, 1993, and we're already repeating this shit again.
Yeah.
Oh, it's never stopped.
Well, I mean, I guess, repeating is probably the wrong word.
Deja vu. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, as we know,
I probably should hurry up a little bit because we are getting really close to 2 hours.
Yeah, no, I am trying to.
So let's start moving a little bit further forward so we can just. I'm sure we can do more of this another time if we have to.
Yeah, and as you know, all of what came out of that privatization, market liberalization, possibly other things. You have other dictators around the world. So you had Argentina with Carlos Menem. So you had some of the Eastern Bloc, which had the same thing with the whole shock therapy. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, people came like Hungary, Poland, tried to do shock therapy. Didn't, had mixed results, I suppose you could say. Then you have someone, this guy nicknamed Goni, who had, oh God, I lost my place. Look, he has ties. All these guys have ties. I will make this.
We can make this available too.
Exactly.
Available online. Yeah. Maybe even we can link to the reference article that I know, or document you've got there that I can already see.
the most succinct way to put this is, Argentina, Brazil, all these places, especially South America, has had a whole situation with the rise of neoliberal policies spreading out, and this all comes back to the Pinochet stuff with Chile. Yeah. Anyway, so that gets to sort of the conclusion of this, which is here it is. So firstly, we want to go, where's the Atlas connections? Well, I sort of got that all listed out here.
Yep.
As you can see, there's Roger Douglas has associations with NPS. You have similarities in the Voice campaign with ACT parties in Race by the Vision. In Division by Race slogan. Seymour has called Atlas old friends. You have Alan Gibbs has direct ties to all the founders, has donated over $700,000. Jenny Gibbs is Alan's wife, actively supports the neoliberal agenda, as we can see evidenced right here, and has been mentioned by some of the people in the community. Here are some of the donations they have made in only the last 2 years, all from Dame Jenny Gibbs. You have 100,000 there.
Isn't it amazing how much all of these people are willing to pay to avoid paying taxes?
Yeah.
Like almost I will spend my last dollar to make sure that nobody else gets any benefit.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's the one thing they excel at is just hiding.
Well, I mean, they made a whole union for that theory, Chewie, basically.
Yep.
Now we got so we also got TPU, which part of the Atlas network, accepts money from big tech and nicotine, all that kind of stuff. They publish, a shit lot of press releases. They host campaigns like Stop Three Waters. They criticized for using fake identity. I don't even remember doing that one, but apparently that was they have strong ties to National, with Chris Bishop's dad being a founding chairman, which I wasn't aware of.
Not surprised though.
Yep. So lots of things there. They effectively, and I saw someone sort of sum this up quite nicely, they effectively act as an arm of National Act during the elections, conducting polls, advertising, speaking to media, etc., all without having to declare a source of their funding. So it's a very convenient relationship they have. Hobson's Pledge, probably people are curious about this. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, I believe also Nicola Willis was on the board of the New Zealand Initiative.
Oh, hell. Even with all the pages of research that Rogers did, and we're still missing people. That's how big.
As you're going to hear at the end, this isn't even the tip of the iceberg. I had so much left to do. Look, I've been doing this for 4 days, guys.
We're going to have to do a proper full deep dive one day for sure. Don't worry.
Yeah. Hobson's Pledge, no apparent connection, except Costello was a leader of the Hobson's Pledge Trust and chair of the Taxpayers Union, which I thought was notable, especially because we know she seems to take money from places. So New Zealand Initiative, which is a mix of the Business Roundtable and New Zealand Institute, that was Alan Gibbs again, and that was, I forgot to mention this, that was the Business Roundtable was a key influencer in Rogernomics, so that he was very much involved in that. And Ruth and Asia, I believe. And this just goes back to sort of a summary. Atlas in the broader context. Atlas was founded in 1981, who worked with Hayek and Friedman. Fisher's work directly led to tanks in Australia and New Zealand, influencing policies like Rogernomics, privatization, cuts to subsidies, alignment with the MPS principles. And Atlas-affiliated organizations also come promote climate skepticism, deregulation, anti-government narratives globally. So that was sort of my summary of all of what I've just done there. And that brings us to sort of the final tit of it. We're right at the end, the home stretch.
Hell yeah!
Why am I doing this?
Oh, you're doing good. Don't think you're doing good.
So we come back to the video, the Q&A puff piece from earlier. And it turns out they did a thing a year before that called Trick or Treaty. What this happened, we received complaints from Mr. Brad Lips, the current Atlas chair, who actually opened a media cancel complaint. Yes. Where
oh my God.
Yes, he was not happy with their representation. It was specifically, as you guys will remember, Dr. Walker. He came on to talk about Atlas about a month ago. A lot of this work is thanks to him as well. He's very much a pivotal figure in all of this. They disputed a claim that he made, and I quote, "One thing that is consistent across all these Atlas network think tanks is that they will oppose anything that gets in the way of the fossil fuel industry, whether climate is policy or indigenous land rights, whether it's climate policy or indigenous land rights." Yeah, so he didn't like that statement, and they went on to have these key disputes. So they dispute that statement by Mr. Walker. Atlas is not a partner of Advance Australia, as far as I can tell. That is true. That's just straight up true. Atlas Network does not receive funding from oil, gas companies, and oil, gas, blah, 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 blah. As we've seen, they're literally founded on the basis of gas money. That's literally their origin. Or it's literally in their blood. It's intertwined. You can't deny that. Like,
you can't take the two from each other. Yeah.
No. Yeah, so you two are one, you cannot separate. The Atlas Network does not oppose climate policy or indigenous land rights. Again, that goes just direct Atlas partners like IPA and Liberty Works have been linked to campaigns against climate policies as well. And then you have the Atlas Network did not have a role in the voice debate and did not have a coordinating role during the campaign, which I think is even more blatantly like, again, the IPA in Australia have been directly linked to campaigns against the voice, and they are direct affiliates associated with Atlas.
They didn't have a role. They just had their fingers in every fucking little thing. It's different. Clearly,
there's an Excel sheet you can get because Atlas used to list their partners on their website. They've deleted it now. So you can Yeah, but that's how we know about a lot of these, because they list on their own website, and just using the Wayback Machine, you can see like who they listed. Yeah. Anyway, so the initial I didn't spell questions right. The initial questions. So what is Atlas? Why the puff piece? I think we've answered those two pretty well. Why the puff piece is literally their entire complaint was, why did you not come to us? So when Q&A went to do, I think when Debbie mentioned it on Q&A, they were like, oh shit, we got to cover this. So we don't get another complaint. So I think that's why that exists. Are they shadowy? From everything I can see, yeah, they're a pretty shadowy organization, definitely.
Oh, yeah. Their timeline was far too big.
Yeah, I know. And do they fund political activity? Oh, yeah. And do they fund political activity? Well, I just said Mummy and Daddy definitely do. So whether or not she wants to say, oh, I don't. Well, your parents do. So, sorry, banging the table with my mic. So I'm just trying to draw some conclusions here, but we'll sort of just skip over them. But it's essentially saying what I've already said.
Yeah, I think we've all kind of... We can probably all see where those lines point to. And
yes.
I mean, to be fair, I think, I mean, I know you and I have been talking about this for a long time, and holy shit.
Yeah, anyway, that was my speed run of all that information that I've done.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'll just pull it down.
And I've yet to cover Marsden Point and CAF's Africa, the shit they're doing in Africa. There's so much going on in Africa. I would love to touch Africa. And what I've dubbed the cult of Atlas, because honestly, you brought up Nixium earlier. So much of this reminds me of Nixium.
Yeah, I'm not even surprised, to be honest. And I mean, I see. You go, Chew.
I was just going to say that presentation was like, oh my god, holy shit levels. Wow.
Welcome to Friday, boy.
Wow. I am impressed. They're very, very good.
I also think you'll like this joke, guys. Gas money funds gaslighters. Also, Peter Syme corrected me that they're not a union. And I mean, TPU, like, the U's pretty... Also, we got to thank you for a beautiful, beautiful timeline. Because
thank you. And just on that, I would like to thank, again, Tui Politics, the now deleted user Mountain Tui from NZ Politics, and this great video. Everyone should go watch it, called Atlas, the Atlas Network, that was hosted by Western Australian Green Senator Scott London, Senator Jeremy Walker, Dr. Jeremy Walker, and some of the other people that were...
Send me the links and we'll put them into the chat. But yeah, like, I knew you were gonna do a good job, but fuck, man, you just went.
One more thing.
Right,
and I got
go
this.
on. Go on.
I was just because I was looking for money. I was looking at the money, right? And I was just trying to find the money. And I just noticed something. And here's the financial statements from Labour. So you'll see this from 2023. You'll see the Green parties. Look at that.
Yeah.
Surely National's going to be shit. Oh, no, National's pretty damn good. In fact, this is the biggest. Look at that. Here's ACT. That's it. 2 pages.
It looks like my bank statement when I get it in the mail. What are you talking about?
The minimal amount that they can declare they have done. There's
fucking shady. What the hell?
And that's the only thing they can do. The only thing these guys can do is hide the money, because they cannot hide all their connections. That's the thing I've sort of learned here.
No, and I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is absolute insanity. Fuck. Anything else you want to say on that?
No, that's it.
No. I just want to look back to the helicopters and Pinochet thing. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, wow.
That's the sort of stuff that is circulating in Proud Boys. That sort of thing.
And if anyone wants to know how fresh this stuff is in terms of psychology, Nancy McLean, in that video that I referenced before, the Atlas Network, she says there's no apparent concept in social science of this, so it's all developing theories. So there's not even a social science concept for what Atlas is doing right now.
So what you were saying is that all this research that and beautiful study that you've just done is groundbreaking, and it's something that we don't even have a name for.
No, stolen work. I stole this from everyone else.
Oh yeah, but it's still,
like every great inventor.
Yeah,
like every great inventor, I'm just stealing from people. So
still, it's good to actually be talking about it though. And honestly, like, also I love this one here. If I believe all of this, will Rimmer call me a conspiracist? Yes, of course he's going to.
100%.
Because otherwise, actually, I've got a meme for this. Hold on, we'll skip through them. I got a meme for this, guys. It's really small, and I'm really sorry. I'll fix my memes next time, but it's a conspiracy. The government took down the Parliament website on purpose. Actually, it's just routine underfunding of essential infrastructure. Government underfunding of essential infrastructure is a literal conspiracy between government and big business. And if we apply that to this, the meme still fits. And also, fun fact, I learned that the term conspiracy theorist was actually coined by the CIA. That seems fucking convenient. But that's a different rabbit hole that I'll go down on another Friday.
The rabbit holes are coming.
The holes were deep, and that Atlas hole was fucking huge. So thank you.